Hey everybody, welcome back to JB's Total Gaming, and today I'm going to be talking about whether or not you should buy Eclipse. Big epic space game or complicated economic euro? Kinda both? This is a rather interesting game. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It is also rather highly rated on Board Game Geek, so you probably assume that I'm going to recommend it. Yes and no. This is a game that also, probably the biggest review site out there, doesn't really like all that much. Several people from that site. And why is that? Why is it a game that's so high related that I love is something that a lot of people don't like? Well, one thing I pride myself on this channel is trying to show everyone both the positive and negatives and reasons that certain people may not like a game, and that's what we're going to talk about. Eclipse is, at its essence, a hybrid game. If anyone tries to sell you on the idea that this is TI3 Lite, that this is massive epic space battles throwing stuff at each other, a Ameritrash style of game, but in a shorter time, it's not. If anyone tries to say, however, that this is just an economic euro with some space combat thrown in, it's not that either. To me, this is probably the perfect definition of a hybrid game that combines, dice chucking, big epic combat with a bunch of plastic spaceships going all over the place, and having to balance your economy. So, in different aspects of that economy, your science, your money, and then also your production. So we're going to look at some potential positives and negatives, and like a lot of games, and what I try to do on this channel with these new style videos is show you, for what types of gamers who are going to potentially find things positive and negative. So first let's look at some things that are maybe definitely negatives, or some things that are potentially going to be negatives for you. Alright, one of the first potential negatives I want to talk about is the luck factor in this game. There is a decent amount of luck. So one of the actions you can do, and one of the things you're going to do very early in the game, and pretty often, is explore for more tiles. So if I'm the green player, I might take an action to explore in an area around me. There are different tiles for inner, middle, and then outer spaces that, reach around the outside here in my planet. I'm going to move this stuff just a little bit closer for demonstration purposes. So, let's say I want to explore the inner. There are going to be lots of that's actually a starting home tile, so let's not look at that. But there are going to be lots of different tiles. In general, the inner tiles are going to have better stuff on it, but more potential to run into threats. But, whenever you get a tile, you may get stuff that has an ancient spaceship that's still out there you have to fight or something like that. You may not. You may get random things that show up that give you bonuses that will potentially either give you points or help you, give you technology or something like that. You may run into almost nothing. And that's the thing. The different areas give you an idea of what's going to be out there, but you might explore an outer area because you don't have the idea, the ability to fight combat, but still run into ancient ships. You might run into an inner area and you have a bunch of great stuff that you can basically get for free. And that's kind of the thing. And one of the things about this game is you're going to be needing to balance your economy, and this yellow color you're going to want to see. That represents money. You need money to do actions. And we'll look at the player board in just a second. But if you can't get access to money planets early on in the game, you may be at a major disadvantage. So the stuff you get as far as that goes is a big factor. So luck can definitely play a role in that. Luck can play a role in the technologies. Certain technologies, you're going to come out every round and maybe there's stuff you really want to get. And this, yes, each player is going to have a factor in this. You basically determine turn order by who passes first. But, you're not really going to be able to see what's available. But again, so that kind of is going to affect everybody somewhat equally. But there's a lot of kind of randomness in the game, which may bother some people because there are definitely some Euro aspects to the game. Now if we take a look at the player board, we can see, how everything is delineated. Over on the right here, we're going to see something that marks our science, our income, and our production every turn. Our science allows us to research more technologies. Our income allows us to take actions, and our production allows us to build things like ships. Every time we take an action, and this is one of my favorite things about the game, we move a tile and then place it on the action that we take, like the explore action. Whenever we take over a sector, we have to put one of these down in order to mark that we take it over. And this is where a big part of the economic aspect of the game comes in. Every action we take in every area we control expands basically the cost that our empire needs to do to be able to run all of that. And then the cost at the end of the round is going to start going up kind of dramatically as we get near the end. There are technologies that give you more discs, but as you control more territory and as you take more actions, running your empire gets more expensive. It makes sense, which is why money is important. But now let's get to another potential negative about this game. This game is kind of fiddly. So that technology board that I showed you right up here is going to have a bunch of base technologies that you're going to start out with that people can upgrade. Every round it's going to have more technologies come out that people can buy. And, there's just going to be a lot of tokens. As you upgrade your ships, there's going to be tokens that you're going to change your ships around. You're going to put technologies onto your board. So any game this big, you probably expect a certain amount of fiddliness, but it is something else to keep in mind. So some potential negatives: if you don't like the idea of a hybrid game, you're not going to like that. You may not like the fiddliness, you may not like the amount of luck. But again, those are all just potential negatives. One thing that I personally find a negative is something that other people aren't annoyed by at all, and that's what I call, or not I call, but it's called the missile strategy. So one of the things you can get on the technology board are these plasma missiles. Why is that annoying? Well, if we look at our ships here, whenever you have a ship, you have to have an engine. You have to have, power to do stuff. Other than that, rules don't really apply. And normally, so like for example, this ship starts with 3 power, and then it's got an additional power here, so 4. So it has 1 and 8 power. I could cover this up, but I'm always going to need an engine, and that takes 1 power. Now, normally, if I want to buy better weapons or things like that, I'm going to have to power it. So I'm going to have to, or even more powerful things that add to my attack rolls or take away from my opponent's attack rolls, things like that. The better ones take more power, so you need power in order to run them. Missiles don't take power. So you can basically just cover up everything in your ship but your engine with missiles, as long as you have the power to run your engine, basically. And what missiles do is they fire off before anything your opponent does. And, well, you can get to the point where ships are just rolling a ridiculous amount of missiles. And usually what you do is you have enough power for your engines and then some plus modifications. So, for example, this +2, that's going to give you a +2 on all of your rolls. Basically, to get a hit in this game, you need to roll a 6. But, of course, you can modify all those rolls. So if you have a +2, 4s and better will hit. If you have +4... well, almost everything is going to hit. So that's pretty interesting. So if you have that ability then to load up with missiles, you can basically win fights before your opponent gets to do anything. Now, if you don't successfully kill all of your opponent's ships, you're basically going to have to flee because you're not going to have any other weapons to take them out, and they can slowly pick you off. And basically, they only get 1 round shooting at you if you back off. But even if you don't entirely take out your opponent, you probably aren't going to lose any ships and will take out most of your opponent's ships if you have enough missiles. You can counterbalance missiles by getting things like shields that put negatives on rolls, or just having a lot of health. But part of my issue with the game is that people can quickly tech up with missiles. They can just throw them on there, whereas then you might have already spent time teching out your ships in other ways, and then if you need to counter missiles, you basically wasted those previous actions teching out your ship, and then now you have to tech out against something else. So those upgrade actions is one of the actions on your player board that you did where, and for example, this race has 2 upgrades when they do it. Well, now you kind of have to undo those, and I personally find that a little bit annoying. Alright, so those were some negatives about the game that some people may not like. What are some positives about the game? Well, one thing is you do have very quick turns. Remember those action discs I showed you? So on each one of your turns, you're basically going to do 1 action. So while even in a game with more players, each turn you're only doing 1 thing, and there can be a little bit of time in between turns, but since you can only do 1 action, exploring, changing influence in sectors, researching, upgrading your ships, building stuff, or moving fleets, well, you're never going to have to wait too long, even with a decent number of players, because everybody's only going to do 1 thing. Another potential positive, now I said this is negative. If you don't like hybrid games, you won't like this. I love hybrid games. They're some of my favorite games, and if you enjoy that kind of balance between, chucking a bunch of dice and balancing your economy, then this could definitely be the game for you. So another positive about this game is the diversity. So here we have the Orion Hegemony that has basically the best starting ships. They all have -1 shields and all some cool stuff. They're very militaristic. Here we have a race that is very scientific. So if we look at them, when they do certain actions, everything is going to be just a little bit different. For example, if we look here, the research has 1 token. So whenever the Orion Hegemony does research, they'll be able to get 1 basic, 1 thing off of the tree. Whereas in this faction, you can get 2. Now, I need the science to be able to pay for both, but you can make some really powerful moves researching. There's a lot of ways to score points. By filling out your research track at the end of the game, you can score points. You get these secret tokens for winning battles. You get points for controlling sectors in the game and stuff like that. So there are definitely different ways you can play with the different factions, and I really like that variability. I think that what the game has to offer, even in the base game, is pretty cool. The combat, I could take or leave. In the beginning, you're rolling a lot of dice and missing because only 6 hits. Later in the game, you're rolling massive amount of dice with upgraded ships, and the game comes with plenty of dice, and then basically different weapons may hit for more damage and things like that. So the combat can become kind of brutal late game where you have these massive battles, but I'm neither here nor there with the combat. But it does allow you to play a big epic space game in a reasonable amount of time. No, it is not TI3 Lite. It is a very different game, but for me, it's a game that I actually prefer, both because of the shorter amount of time and because I like that hybrid game. So the game offers fast turns between your turns, a reasonable length overall, and if you like the hybrid game, then it's definitely something that I think you would enjoy. So hopefully I did a decent job of explaining why there are so many differing opinions about this game. Basically, if you're someone who likes the idea of balancing those levels of your economy being equally important to being a good tactician and war leader, then go get this game. There's a reason it's rated so high, and it's one of my favorite games. If you would rather chuck dice and just have big epic combat, then if you're looking for something like, Twilight Imperium 3 obviously is kind of the industry standard for big epic games. There are shorter games that are more like that, potentially Empires of the Void. There are other games that suit that maybe a little bit better if you're more interested in just that aspect of it. However, like I said, if you like that idea of balancing kind of both aspects, I highly recommend this game. However, just like there are some, Ameritrash gamers who may not like having so much of a focus on the Euro aspects of the game, there are some Euro gamers who may not like aspects of this game because of some of the luck and randomness and the dice rolls and things like that. So that's the idea. I think a purist of either side may not enjoy this game a great deal, which is why there obviously are some people who, really don't like this game. But if you have experienced hybrid games that kind of balance those things, then, like I said, this is an amazing game. It is a little bit on the long side in comparison to just games in general, but still short for what the game is, kind of a big epic space opera that also involves different cabinet members balancing things. So, like I said, if that appeals to you, go get this game, and if you really would rather have things on one side of the spectrum or the other, then it's probably not for you. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye!